Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today. This presentation is about the silent war currently taking place across the globe and primarily in the U.S. A stealth infiltration into our industries, colleges, culture, think tanks, government bodies, and international governing bodies by the Communist Chinese government. Let us begin with our industries. Here's an article from the Daily Caller from November 19th, 2019, with the headline, quote, "Foreign-born researchers at U.S. agencies were secretly working for China and recruiting others. Senate report finds." Now, a summary of this report says that, again, foreign-born researchers at U.S. agencies were secretly working for China and recruiting others. It says that foreign-born researchers working for U.S. agencies were secretly on China's payroll, signing side agreements to send sensitive research to that country as part of a recruitment operation called the Thousand Talents Plan, a Senate report found. 10,000 Chinese nationals in 2018 conducted research in the Department of Energy's national labs, and one even had colleagues write him letters of recommendation to the Communist Party-run recruitment program, the bipartisan report stated. Agencies like the National Institute of Health do not even track attempted foreign influence. The Department of State denies only 5% of suspicious visas, and the FBI shut down a key program, according to the report. And I guess some things never change, do they, folks? And look at that. The NIH, the National Institute of Health, once again, with that entrenched good Dr. Fauci for the last 40 years, aside from his Jesuit connections, seems he's quite the failure. But this is assuming only incompetence here, and I suspect that this is not the case. Foreign-born researchers working at U.S. agencies secretly joined China's payroll, sending sensitive U.S.-funded research to the country, while U.S. government agencies took almost no defensive measures against a major recruitment operation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this particular case of large-scale espionage is only one of dozens that can be found with a simple internet search. We could spend an hour going over all these different instances, and we don't quite have that kind of time. Surprisingly, instances like these can be found everywhere. The problem is that our foreign-controlled, ironically Chinese-controlled media doesn't push this to the sheep. They don't make this stuff front and center. Oh, they report on it, dear listeners. They just don't connect the dots and put it into perspective, and that's how they continue getting away with this stuff without massive class action lawsuits crumbling them. So, when listening to this report, keep in mind how rampant this is. Keep in mind that this is merely one instance in one industry sector. In fact, it's a worldwide Chinese infiltration operation. As mentioned a few seconds ago, this operation is called the Chinese Thousand Talents Plan. The Thousand Talents Plan was established in 2008 by the central government of China. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, everything that goes on in China or that comes out of China is controlled by the communist Chinese central government. It was created to recognize and recruit leading international experts in scientific research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. The program was further elevated in 2010 to become the top-level award given through China's National Talent Development Plan, a plan that was conceived jointly by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the State Council of the People's Republic of China in 2010 to strengthen innovation and international competitiveness within China. 1000 Talent Plan professorship is the highest academic honor awarded by the State Council and is the top-level award given by the Ministry of Education. The program includes two mechanisms: resources for permanent recruitment into Chinese academia and resources for short-term appointments that typically target international experts who have full-time employment at a leading international university or research laboratory. The program has three categories: Innovative 1,000 Talents Plan, which is a long-term / short-term, and it's for Chinese scholars below 55 years of age. Foreign 1,000 Talents Plan is a long-term / short-term operation for foreigners only below 55 years of age. And then there's the Young Scholar 1,000 Talents Plan, or the Overseas Young Talents Project of China. And this is for those below 40 years of age. And I want to point out something about these three categories. These three categories show China's long-term planning. Foreign and Chinese-born scholars over 55 years of age represents those who are established, those who have accomplishments, achievements, and those whom are already entrenched in some form of academia or industry. The Young Scholar Talents Plan, for those below 40, is their future puppets, those whom have not yet entrenched themselves in industry or academia, those who are still attempting to make a name for themselves. By targeting these groups, it gives one an idea of the long-term goals from this communist plan of global thievery. The Thousands Talents program primarily targets Chinese citizens who were educated in elite programs overseas and who have been successful as entrepreneurs, professionals, and researchers. The program also recognizes a small number of elite foreign-born experts with skills that are critical to China's international competitiveness in science and innovation. International experts in the latter category are typically winners of major prizes such as the Nobel Prize and the Fields Medal, and are expected first to have made internationally renowned contributions to a field of technological importance to China, and secondly, to hold either a tenured position at one of the world's top universities or a senior role in an internationally important research organization. In November of 2010, the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations and Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs held an open hearing on the Chinese talent recruitment plans, including the TTP, and called the programs a threat to national security. The report from the hearing cited TTP contracts as violating research values, TT members willfully failing to disclose their membership to their home institutions, and cited numerous cases against TT members for theft of intellectual property and fraud. One TTP member stole proprietary defense information on U.S. military jet engines. The report indicated that TTP targets U.S.-based researchers and scientists, regardless of ethnicity or citizenship, who focus on or have access to cutting-edge research and technology. The success of this program in recruiting U.S.-trained scientists back to China has been viewed with concern from the U.S., with a June 2018 report from the National Intelligence Council declaring an underlying motivation of the program to be to facilitate the legal and illicit transfer of U.S. technology, intellectual property, and know-how to China. In January 2020, the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrested Charles M. Lieber, the chair of Harvard University's Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology, for lying about his ties to the program. And, ladies and gentlemen, this makes for a good segue to the Chinese infiltration of our college institutions. Charles Lieber was the chairman of the Harvard Chemistry Department, and he was recently charged with lying about his cooperation and payment from the Communist Chinese government. According to this Washington Times article, federal prosecutors charged Harvard University's Chemistry Department chairman with lying to the U.S. Department of Defense about his ties to a controversial Chinese talent recruitment program. And they're speaking about the Thousand Talents program. Prosecutors say Charles Lieber concealed almost $2 million from authorities in an alleged scheme to hide his ties to a Chinese university linked to a program accused of stealing U.S. intellectual property from businesses and universities. By hiding his ties, Mr. Lieber was able to secure $18 million in research grant funding from the Department of Defense and National Institutes of Health, prosecutors said. $18 million from the NIH, huh? And I'll keep bringing this up each and every time it pops up, dear listeners. There's that organization that's ran by the good Dr. Fauci. Why is this man always in the middle of these failures? If I had failed this much at my job, I'd be unemployed, and my past work history performance would probably keep me unemployed, but for some reason not in these big institutions. In fact, it seems that they get promoted for this kind of stuff. And it doesn't seem that way, folks. It is that way. Now ask yourself why. Continuing with the article, this is not an accident or coincidence, said U.S. Attorney Andrew E. Lelling at a press conference to announce the charges. This is a small sample of China's ongoing campaign to siphon off American know-how and technology for China's gain. Wuhan University of Technology paid Mr. Lieber $1.74 million to establish a lab and conduct research, along with a $50,000 per month salary and $158,000 in living expenses over several years, according to court documents. Mr. Lieber is accused of failing to disclose the money received to the Defense Department and withholding information from government investigators. Did you guys catch that? Wuhan University of Technology paid Mr. Lieber $1.74 million to establish a lab and conduct research, along with a $50,000 per month salary and $158,000 in living expenses? Here's a Daily Caller article from April 15th, 2020. The headline reads, quote, "Report, coronavirus came from Wuhan laboratory." Now, I omitted the second half of this headline because I don't like to be lied to, and I hate the satanic media trying to program me. What do I mean? Notice the quote, excuse that this article uses here. They say that China was trying to compete with America, and that's why this was being studied in Wuhan. So that's it, huh? Trying to compete with America. A breaking Fox News report claims that, according to sources, the coronavirus pandemic currently ravaging the world came from a lab in Wuhan, China, as part of the Chinese effort to medically compete with the U.S. Right. Further, it states, COVID-19 originated in a Wuhan laboratory not as a bioweapon, but as part of China's efforts to demonstrate that its efforts to identify and combat viruses are equal to or greater than the capabilities of the United States, Fox News reports, citing multiple sources who have been briefed on the details of early actions by China's government and have seen relevant materials. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a dictionary definition of controlled opposition. What's being done here is this. The Chinese know that it's a matter of time before the truth comes to light. It's almost inevitable. So, what the Satan-worshipping controllers do in situations like this is they attempt to steal the narrative and then slide it and give more innocent reasons for why it was done in order to manage the fallout and continue to keep many sheep in the dark. The fact that they stumble over themselves to give us the more innocent reasons for this 3 times within the first 2 paragraphs of this article tells us everything that we need to know. Folks, it seems that this was released on purpose, and it seems that the good Harvard professor may have been involved in this, but this report isn't only about SARS-2, and so a deep dig on this professor can be for another report. Here's an article from the Washington Examiner with the headline, quote, "Feds warn, China sending thousands of spies to U.S. colleges." It reads, Chinese intelligence services have sent thousands of people to U.S. colleges under the guise of college students and professors, federal officials said. "We want to encourage people to come here and study," Andrew Lelling, the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, told reporters Friday. This isn't about targeting everyone who's a Chinese national, but there are thousands who are directly linked to a state-sponsored effort to steal intellectual property. That warning underscores the scope of China's economic espionage, as the Justice Department terms it, as a tool for national security and economic threat. That threat is part of a broader effort by Beijing to take advantage of American colleges and universities, which provoked a backlash among some U.S. officials. FBI Director Christopher Wray warned last year that China was using non-traditional intelligence collectors to launch a, quote, whole of society, end quote, threat against the U.S. Those worries found an echo among lawmakers who worry that China's educational programs are platforms for propaganda and influence operations. While Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been warning European allies that Chinese tech giants such as Huawei and ZTE are also being used as spy assets. And we all know about Huawei and ZTE. Here's an article from 2016 showing the biggest American companies now owned by China. Among them are a hotel chain called Starwood Hotels, which was acquired for $14.3 billion. Smithfield Foods was acquired by Chinese government for $7 billion. Ingram Micro, which is a microchip processor, $6.3 billion. General Electric Appliance Division was purchased by China. Motorola. And of course we know about Hollywood being bought. Legendary Films and AMC Theaters are now Chinese owned. And remember, this is all from 2016. There will be many, many more today. Another example of Chinese infiltration is their Confucius Institute program. The Confucius Institute is a public educational organization under the Ministry of Education of the People's Republic of China, whose stated aim is to promote Chinese language and culture, support local Chinese teaching internationally, and facilitate cultural exchanges. The organization has been criticized due to concerns of rising Chinese influences in the countries in which it operates. Unlike other organizations, many Confucius Institutes cooperate directly on university campuses, thus giving rise to unique concerns related to academic freedom and political influence. As of 2019, there are 530 Confucius Institutes in dozens of countries on 6 continents. Criticism of the institutes have included administrative concerns about finance, academic viability, legal issues, and relations with the Chinese partner universities, as well as broader concerns about improper influence over teaching and research, industrial and military espionage, surveillance of Chinese abroad, and undermining Taiwanese influence. And there's much more on this if you want to dig. I just wanted to use this Confucius Institute as an example of Chinese attempts to infiltrate our culture. Now, what about our wonderful, moral, ethical politicians? Chai Spy, Dianne Feinstein? A Federalist article from April 2008 with the headline, Senator Dianne Feinstein's ties to China go way deeper than an alleged office spy. And it starts with a quote from Dianne. It says, quote, I sometimes say that in my last life, maybe I was Chinese. It goes on to say, former intelligence officials said Chinese intelligence once recruited a staff member at a California office of U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, and the source reported back to China about local politics. A spokesman for Feinstein said that the office doesn't comment on personal matters or investigations, but noted that no Feinstein staffer in California has ever had a security clearance. According to 4 former intelligence officials in the 2000s, a staffer in Senator Dianne Feinstein's San Francisco field office was reporting back to the MSS, China's Ministry of State Security, its intelligence and security apparatus. While this person, who was a liaison to the local Chinese community, was fired, charges were never filed against him. One former official reasoned that this was because the staffer was providing political intelligence and not classified information, making prosecution far more difficult. The suspected informant was run by officials based at China's San Francisco consulate, said another former intelligence officer. The spy's handler probably got an award back in China for his work, noted this former official dryly. Folks, we could go much further into this, but this presentation is an overview, a 40,000-foot view, so we can't go too deep into some of this stuff. So how about our infiltration in our VP and our Secretary of State offices? Well, here's a New York Post article from March 2018 with the headline, "Inside the Shady Private Equity Firm Run by Kerry and Biden's Sons." It reads, Joe Biden and John Kerry have been pillars of the Washington establishment for more than 30 years. So their sons going into business together in June 2009 was not exactly a bolt out of the blue. But the summer of 2009, the 39-year-old Hunter joined forces with the son of another powerful figure in American politics, Chris Hines. Joining them in the Rosemont venture was Devin Archer, a longtime Hines and Kerry friend. The three friends established a series of related LLCs. The trunk of the tree was Rosemont Capital, the alternative investment fund of the Hines family office. The partners attached several branches to the Rosemont Capital trunk, including Rosemont Seneca Partners LLC, Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, and Rosemont Realty. Of the various deals in which these Rosemont entities were involved, one of the largest and most troubling concerns was Rosemont Seneca's partners. Over the next 7 years, as both Joe Biden and John Kerry negotiated sensitive and high-stakes deals with foreign governments, Rosemont entities secured a series of exclusive deals, often with those same foreign governments. Nowhere is that more true than in their commercial dealings with Chinese government-backed enterprises. Rosemont Seneca joined forces in doing business in China with another politically connected consultancy called the Thornton Group. The Massachusetts-based firm is headed by James Bulger, the nephew of the notorious mob hitman James Whitey Bulger. Whitey was the leader of the Winter Hill Gang, part of the South Boston Mafia. Under indictment for 19 murders, he disappeared. He was later arrested, tried, and convicted, and was then killed in prison in 2018, I believe. James Bulger's father, Whitey's younger brother, Billy Bulger, serves on the board of directors of the Thornton Group. He was the longtime leader of the Massachusetts State Senate, and with their long overlap by state and by party, he was a political ally of Massachusetts Senator John Kerry. Less than a year after opening Rosemont Seneca's doors, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer were in China, having secured access at the highest levels. Thornton Group's account of the meeting on their Chinese language website was telling. Chinese executives extended their warm welcome to the Thornton Group with its U.S. partners, Rosemont Seneca, and its chairman, Hunter Biden, second son of the now Vice President Joe Biden. The purpose of the meeting was to explore the possibility of commercial cooperation and opportunity. Curiously, details about the meeting do not appear on their English language websites. Also, according to the Thornton Group, the three Americans met with the largest and most powerful government fund leaders in China, even though Rosemont was both new and small. The timing of this meeting was also curious. It occurred just hours before Hunter Biden's father, the vice president, met with Chinese President Hu in Washington as part of the Nuclear Security Summit. There was a second known meeting with many of the same Chinese financial titans in Taiwan in May of 2011. For a small firm like Rosemont Seneca with no track record, it was an impressive level of access to China's largest financial players. And it was just 2 weeks after Joe Biden had opened up the U.S.-China strategic dialogue with Chinese officials in Washington. And we could go much further here, but we don't really have the time. And many of you know all about this stuff already. What about the 1996 United States campaign finance controversy? Well, this was an alleged effort by the People's Republic of China to influence domestic American politics prior to and during the Clinton administration, and also involved the fundraising practices of the administration itself. China's alleged role in the affair first gained public attention when Bob Woodward and Brian Duffy of the Washington Post published a story stating that a United States Department of Justice investigation into the fundraising activities had uncovered evidence that agents of China sought to direct contributions from foreign sources to the Democratic National Committee before the 1996 presidential campaign. A Republican investigator of the controversy stated that the Chinese plan targeted both presidential and congressional United States elections. How about other politicians? Smaller, lesser-known politicians are still very important. Their votes are needed in order to get certain things done. A good way to gain control of wide swaths of obscure American politicians is to use super PACs, which should be illegal, in my opinion. We will use a super PAC named Woman Vote. 21,635 shares of Baidu Inc., a Chinese technology behemoth with reported ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and they're not just reported. Anything that comes out of that country is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. 21,000 shares was donated by California physician Carla Jurvetson to Women Vote. Women Vote sold the Baidu stock on May 10th for $5.4 million, according to FEC records. The money Women Vote earned from the stock sale, which occurred as trade and economic tensions between the United States and China were rapidly escalating, represents more than half of the money the Democrat-backing super PAC collected during May. This money was then spread out to different politicians, earning China a certain amount of influence over these politicians. And this is how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. Infiltration, not invasion. Infiltration into our industries and corporations. Infiltration into our colleges, educators, and researchers. Infiltration into our culture, including Hollywood, and of course, infiltration into our government. This is war, ladies and gentlemen, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not. And it's past time that the docile American public realizes this fact. I want to leave you with one more example of the Communist Chinese infiltrating our politicians, this time our state governors. Here's a clip of the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, speaking to U.S. governors. And if you enjoyed this presentation, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
In the words of President Reagan, when you're approached for introduction or a connection to a deal, trust but verify. So here's the lesson. The lesson is that competition with China is not just a federal issue. It's why I wanted to be here today, Governor Hogan. It's happening in your states with consequences for our foreign policy, for the citizens that reside in your states, and indeed for each of you. And in fact, whether you're viewed by the CCP as friendly or hardline, know that it's working you. Know that it's working the team around you. Competition with China is happening inside of your state, and it affects our capacity to perform America's vital national security functions. Indeed, under Xi Jinping, the country is moving exactly in the opposite direction. More repression, more unfair competition, more predatory economic practices, indeed a more aggressive military posture as well. But you should know, this doesn't mean we can't do business with China. We can find places to cooperate when our interests converge. You can see that in the first part of the trade deal that President Trump got done, signed last month. We're happy about that. It was the right thing to do. That was indeed a deal that was good for both the United States and China. And these economic ties are powerful. They're important and good. They're good for your state. They're good for America. The Chinese government has been methodical in the way it's analyzed our system, our very open system, one that we're deeply proud of. It's assessed our vulnerabilities. and it's decided to exploit our freedoms to gain advantage over us at the federal level, the state level, and the local level.